Hi everybody, today I have a reading progress / wrap up. Before I get into the books that I have here, I'm going to actually go through the ratings of the books I have already returned to the library, because obviously I I went to the library today to pick up some books and return some. So let's go through these ratings. The first book I want to talk about is So Fetch by Jennifer Cation Armstrong. This author does a lot of deep dives into television shows and movies. This particular book was about the making of the movie Mean Girls with Tina Fey, Lindsay Lohan, Amanda Seyfried, Lacey Chabert, etc. This is one of my favorite movies from the 90s and early 2000s. So the thing I like the best about these books that Jennifer Cation Armstrong writes is that she goes into detail about the casting of the movie and all the costumes and all the stuff that went on behind the scenes of making it. So another book that I read by her, two books I have read by her are about Seinfeld and Sex in the City. They are called Seinfeldia and Sex in the City and Us. So Fetch got four stars. The next book is called The Spectacular, which is by Fiona Davis. This was recommended to me by Rhonda. I will tag the video that she mentions this book in the description. This book is a historical fiction book that is set in the 1960s and focuses on the Rockettes who perform at Radio City Music Hall. This book was an easy 4.5 to 5-star rating for me. I love the behind the scenes aspect of what it's like to perform in the Rockettes, and it is on my bucket list to one day either go to New York at Christmas time to go see the Rockettes perform or go to the parade at Thanksgiving for Macy's that I always watch on TV. The next book I recently returned to the library that I wanted to talk about is Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. This is by the same author of Station 11. And both of these books are set in actually, Sea of Tranquility actually focuses in like 3 different time periods: present day, the past, and then 2050. And it's a really cool concept. I really love her writing style too. Just like Station 11, I gave Sea of Tranquility 4.5 stars, and this book was recommended to me by Kalila at Kalila D. The next book I wanted to talk about is Kim Ji-young, born in 1982. This is a coming-of-age story of a Korean girl who lives in San Francisco. And this was recommended to me by, I'm pretty sure, Carrie over at Carrie Can Read. And I gave it 4.5 stars. The next book I wanted to talk about is Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. This is by the same guy who wrote A Gentleman in Moscow, and it's set in 1920s, like right before the stock market crash in 1929 is when this video is set, and it's set in like upstate New York. I just loved the character in this book. She was really interesting to read from, and I did not like the last book I read by Amor Towles, which is called The Gentleman in Moscow, which I gave 3 stars to. I gave The Rules of Civility 4.5 stars. Okay, on to current reads. The first book I wanted to talk about today is the December read for the Reading the Rainbow Book Club at Print Bookstore. I no longer go to this book group in person because of a scheduling conflict that impacted transportation. But this month for Reading the Rainbow Book Club, we read a poetry collection called Pansy by Andrea Gibson, and I will read a poem on being the blowjob queen of my high school. There are 1,000 ways to stay in the closet. All of them suck. Short, sweet, to the point. Nothing relatable for me. But this is the first book I have read by this author. And I mean, I loved all the poems in here. I think they gave me a great insight into her life I believe most of these poems are written from during the time when she was a teenager. So I really liked learning about this author through her poetry. The next book is called Near the Bone by Christina Henry. A couple of the people who read horror books on Instagram, on BookTube, have reviewed this book. I know Jordaline has talked about it. I'm pretty sure that Sarah Without an H has talked about it, and Riley Marie. If I find the links to all of these videos, I will link them in the description. But sometimes I have a hard time gathering all the links together. Maddie can't remember a time before she and William lived alone on a mountain together. She must never make him upset. But when Maddie discovers the mutilated body of a fox in the woods, she realizes that they're not alone after all. There's something in the woods that wasn't there before. Something that makes strange cries in the night. Something with sharp teeth and claws. When 3 strangers appear on a mountaintop looking for the creature in the woods, Maddie knows their presence will anger William. Terrible things happen when William is angry. So obviously this book deals with abuse. So huge trigger warning if you have ever been in an abusive relationship. I started this book Thursday, and I am on page 174. The next book that I'm reading is a reread. Misery by Stephen King, which I read last year and gave 5 stars to. If you have read The Crash by Frida McFadden, I would say that book, it kind of plagiarizes Misery. So if you like this book, just stick with it and do not read The Crash. Before I read The Crash, when I first read The Crash and realized that the main setting of this could be similar to that of Misery, I brushed it off. But then I heard an unpopular book opinion that Frida McFadden's writing is not that good and that some of her books are plagiarized. And in this unpopular opinion, The Crash was the book that was cited. So that made me change my rating of, that made me want to change the rating of The Crash from the current rating I have it at, which is 4 stars, to more of a 2.5 or a 3. So yes, Misery is 5 stars. The next book I'm reading is a reread. It is a holiday novella that I read last year called The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Leese. Chloe Leese writes a lot of great books with disability representation in them. This is the first one I've read, and the second one I've read is Only When It's Us, but I'm planning to read more of her Bergman Brothers series next year. This book, I will tell you what it's about. He loathes the holidays, she loves them. She's full of festive cheer, he's brimming with bah humbugs. Besides unreasonably seizable names, the only thing Jonathan Frost and Gabrielle de Natale have in common is a healthy dose of mutual contempt. Well, that and the same place of employment at the city's most beloved independent bookstore, Bailey's Bookshop. But when the store's owners confess its dire financial state, Jonathan and Gabby discover another unfortunate commonality: the imminent threat of unemployment. When the Baileys request to minimize expenses, win new customers, and make record sales during dancing in their heads, Jonathan and Gabby conclude, barring a financial Christmas miracle, one of them can soon be cut from the payroll. Neither are willing to step down from their position, so they strike a bargain. Whoever has more sales in December gets to stay on in the new year. The loser will resign. With a lifetime's worth of their festive tricks up her sleeve, Gabby should easily outsell her nemesis, except the unreadable Mr. Frost's every move seems purely designed to throw her off her game. As if it wasn't bad enough, Gabby's deceptive ex won't quit pursuing her, and her anonymous online friend suggests they take a break. Worst of all, the pressure mounts to save the bookshop and her job. Gabby meets a new tender side of Jonathan. Is this the same man she's called her cold-hearted enemy? Maybe he's got a motive she just can't figure out. Or maybe Jonathan Frost isn't as chilly as she once thought. Maybe Jonathan and Gabby already know and love each other in ways they never thought possible. This is a 5-star read, and I highly recommend it. I will be talking more about holiday books that I'm reading in the video that Matt and I are doing on the 20th when I talk more about my holiday TBR progress. The next book I'm reading is called The Nanny by Lana Ferguson. I read another book by Lana Ferguson last year that I wasn't too crazy about, which was called Under Lock and Key, which is a romantic comedy about the Loch Ness Monster. So I saw this book come up on a list on Instagram that I found about shows that describe 90s TV shows. I think you can guess which show that this book was paired up with. If you guessed The Nanny with Fran Drescher, then you're right. So let's get into this. Suddenly unemployed and on the brink of eviction, Cassie Evans is left with two choices: get a new job and fast, or fire up her longtime untouched OnlyFans account. But the job market is terrible, and as for OnlyFans, well, there are reasons she can't go back. Just when all hope seems lost, an ad for a live-in nanny position appears to be the solution to all her problems. It's almost too perfect until she meets her would-be employer. Aidan Reed, executive chef and DILF extraordinaire, is far from the stuffy single dad Cassie is imagining. She shocks her when he tells her she's the most qualified applicant he's met in weeks, and practically begs her to take the job. The idea of living under the same roof as Aidan, with his hands that make the hind brain howl and eyes that scream sex, feels dangerous, but no other option. She decides to stay with him and his adorably tenacious daughter, Sophie. Cassie soon discovers that Aidan is not a stranger at all, but instead someone who is very familiar with her, or at least her body. Given that he doesn't remember her, Cassie is faced with an impossible solution. As their relationship heats to temperatures hotter than reached in any kitchen Aidan has ever worked in, Cassie struggles with telling Aidan the truth, and the more terrifying possibility losing the best chance at happiness she's ever had. I just started this book this afternoon when I got back from running errands with my mom, and I am currently on chapter 7. So if this book is inspired. I don't know if this book is actually inspired by the TV show The Nanny, but obviously the title of the book is the same in the TV show. So if this was actually based on a nanny, which I don't think it is, the main female character would definitely be Fran, which is Fran Drescher's character. And then Aiden would obviously be Mr. Sheffield, although in the TV show, Mr. Sheffield has 3 kids. In this book, Aiden only has 1 kid. So now I'm going to get into the books that I'm rereading at the moment for my TBR. Books that I reread really help me to stay out of a reading slump. So that way I don't get too bogged down in books that I don't like. The first book I'm reading is rereading is No Exit by Taylor Adams. I read this book in July for Gabby Reed's Summerween Marathon from July 5th to July 12th, and I really enjoyed it. The other Taylor Adams book I read in July was also called The Last Word. I love his writing style. This book is set on Christmas Eve, and this girl, Darby, is traveling back from college to spend Christmas with her family, but she gets stuck at a rest stop. And she's stuck at this rest stop with, 4 other people. When she goes out to make a phone call to her mom to tell her she is snowed in at the rest stop, she notices a little girl that is in the back seat of a car that is clearly being kidnapped or trafficked. And she realizes that one of the people who is at the rest stop with her is the person who has kidnapped this little girl, and she ends up becoming determined to save her, but she's also realizing that she is risking a lot of her own safety to save this girl. In my reread, I am currently on page 279. The next book I am rereading is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was Taylor Jenkins Reid's release from June, and it focuses on the space program in the 1980s and focuses on Joan, who is taking care of her precocious niece, Frances, until she comes across an advertisement seeking the first women scientists to join NASA's space shuttle program. Suddenly, Joan becomes to be one of the few people to go to space. Selected from a pool of thousands of applicants in the summer of 1980, Joan begins training at Houston's Johnson Space Center alongside an exceptional group of fellow candidates, Top Gun pilot Hank Redmond and scientist John Griffin. Easygoing, but even when the stakes are high, mission specialist Lydia Danes, who has worked too hard to play nice, warm-hearted Donna Fitzgerald, navigating her own secrets, and Vanessa Ford, the magnetic and mysterious aeronautical engineer who can fix any engine and fly any plane. As they become unlikely friends and prepare for their first flight, Joan finds a love she'd never imagined. In this new light, Joan begins to question everything she thinks she knows about her place in the observable universe. Then, in December of 1984, on mission STS-LR9, it all changes in an instant. Fast-paced, thrilling, and emotional, Atmosphere is Taylor Jenkins Reid at her best, telling a passionate and soaring story about the transformative power of love, this time among the stars. So I found a reading list on Instagram that is about books being paired up with Wicked songs, and this obviously goes with Defying Gravity. The next book that I am rereading is called The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I have the sequel for this book, but I'm letting Kathleen borrow it at the moment. This book focuses on Mika. As one of the few witches in Britain, Mika Moon knows she has to hide her magic, keep her head down, and stay away from other witches so their powers don't mingle and draw attention. And as an orphan who lost her parents at a young age and was raised by strangers, she's used to being alone, and she follows the rules with one exception, an online account where she posts videos pretending to be a witch. She thinks no one will take it seriously, but somebody does. An unexpected message arrives begging her to travel to the remote and mysterious Nowhere House to teach 3 young witches how to control their magic. It breaks all of the rules, but Mika goes anyway, and is immediately tangled up in the lives and secrets of not only her charges, but also an absent archaeologist, a retired actor, 2 long-suffering caretakers, and Jamie. The handsome and prickly librarian of Nowhere House would do anything to protect the children, and as far as he's concerned, a stranger like Mika is a threat, and an irritatingly appealing threat. As Mika begins to find her place at Nowhere House, the thought of belonging somewhere feels like a real possibility. But magic isn't the only danger in the world where peril comes knocking at her door, and Mika will need to decide whether to risk everything to protect a found family she did not know she was looking for. I forget which song on the reading list for Wicked this book was paired up with, but I feel like it would probably go with As Long As You're Mine, because I think that song defines Jamie and Mika's relationship. In my reread of this book, I am currently on chapter 23, page 251. So I should finish this book tomorrow at the very latest. The next book I am rereading is called Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. I read this book for From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR back in March. I found it on a list on Instagram about books that describe characters from Gilmore Girls, and this was listed under Lane. So yeah, this book is set in 1950 San Francisco and is a sapphic romance which focuses on a relationship between Lily and Kath. Lily Hugh can't remember exactly when the question took root, but the answer was clear the moment she and Kathy Miller walked under the neon sign of a lesbian bar called the Telegraph Club. America in 1954 is not a safe place for 2 girls to fall in love. Red Scare paranoia threatens everywhere, including the Chinese Americans like Lily. With deportation looming over her father, Lily and Kath risk everything for love. Honestly, this book can actually kind of connect to what's going on right now with ICE deporting immigrants, even though it's set in 1950s San Francisco. Currently in my reread of Last Night at the Telegraph Club, I am on page 289, chapter 37. The other book that I borrowed from Kathleen is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I read this book for the first time in 2023. It's probably my least favorite Ashley Poston book. I don't know. I gave this book 3 stars because I thought the relationship was a little bit too rushed. And since I read this book before, I might as well just answer the discussion question right now so I don't need to worry about it later on. So, At the end of the book, Clementine sets off on a new adventure after she realizes she has changed since she began her publishing career. Have you ever thought about changing careers? Why and did you? So no, I have never thought about changing careers. I'm happy with where I am right now in my life, and I don't think I would ever change. Clementine has a love for art and artists, but more specifically, Vincent van Gogh. Is there a piece of art that moves you? Book, painting, film, comic, they all count. And if so, why? So, this discussion question mentions Vincent van Gogh. And my favorite painting of his has always been the starry night sky. And whenever I'm outside at night, looking at the night sky, I think of that painting. And finally, if you had a plane ticket to anywhere in the world, where would you go? And where do you think Clementine went? At the end of this book, I think that Clementine probably went to Europe to get ideas for recipes to make for her cookbook. And obviously, if I could go anywhere in the world, I would go back to Italy to see my family. But other than that, a top place that I want to go internationally is in London. And there's a book pairings for the 7-year slip in here. And one book that I have read on this list for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR is Garlic and Sapphires by Ruth Rachel, which I gave 5 stars to. And I also read This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal Al-Motar and Max Gladstone, which was also 5 stars. The next book I want to read on this list is either Every Heart a Doorway by Sean McGuire or I actually have this book, so maybe I'll read it next. The Anthropocene Reviewed, Essays on a Human-Centered Planet by John Green. So yeah, I have that book on my bookcase. So once I finish reading this book again and give it back to Kathleen, I will probably read that. So if you have never read Garlic and Sapphires, I highly suggest you check it out. Garlic and Sapphires is a memoir that is written by Ruth Rachel, who used to be a food critic at the New York Times in the 1990s. So if you like cooking and food, I highly recommend. Another holiday book I'm reading right now is called Grace and Henry's Holiday Movie Marathon by Matthew Norman. This book is about 2 grieving widowers who band together during the holidays to have a movie marathon. And each section of this book is centered around a Christmas movie. And this takes place from Thanksgiving weekend to the weekend before Christmas. And the section of the book that I'm on right now is Barbie, A Perfect Christmas, which I have never seen. The discussion question that I wanted to answer today is, Grace and Henry both speak of the ghosts of their deceased spouses. Despite Dr. Butler's words of caution, do you think this behavior has ultimately healthy or unhealthy to the relationship, to their respective grieving processes? I think this is a really interesting thing to talk about because everybody grieves in different ways. And I mean, I have nothing against the way that Grace and Henry are talking about their diseased spouses. The ghosts of their diseased spouses, because maybe during their grieving process, the ghosts or spirits of their passed away loved ones are, like, speaking to them and telling them to, like, not miss them so much. The other discussion question I wanted to answer is, which of the featured holiday movies is your favorite? Is there a movie the author didn't include that he wished he had? So, I have a lot of favorite movies in these books, that are mentioned in this book. One of them I just watched on Friday, and that's Elf. Me and Kathleen watched that on Friday after Double House Arts. The other favorite Christmas movies I have that are mentioned in this book are sorry guys, I'm trying to find what the other sections are called here. My other favorite Christmas movies mentioned in this book besides Elf are It's a Wonderful Life, A Christmas Story, and A Charlie Brown Christmas. Please answer this question in the comments. Can people explain how Die Hard is a Christmas movie? And also Edward Scissorhands. I have not seen either of these movies, so please be insightful below about how these movies are Christmas movies, and then maybe Matt and I will add them to our watch list next year. The final book is a book I'm listening to on audio. It's called The Favorites by Lane Fargo. Please listen to this audiobook. Like Jay-Z, Jones, and the Six, this book is in interview format, so it's best listened to in audio. This focuses on Heath Rocha and Katerina Shaw, who are figure skaters during the Olympics in the late 90s and early 2000s. There's a lot of drama and rivalry between Heath. So Katerina and Heath originally start off as a pairs figure skating team, but then they pair off with their rivals, Bella and Garrett, as partners. And there's a lot of drama that spikes up between Katerina and Heath once they switch partners with each other. This book is a modern retelling of Wuthering Heights by Charlotte Bronte, and I have also read Wuthering Heights twice, just like I've read this book twice. I did not like Wuthering Heights because Catherine and Heathcliff reminded me too much of Rachel and Ross from Friends with how often they argued with each other. But with this book, I liked Katharina and Heath much better because they weren't as easy to compare to Ross and Rachel. And if you guys were around in the 90s like I was, you remember that during the 1996 Olympics, there was a lot of drama between Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding. And I remember that being all over the news at the time. So the drama between Katerina and Heath reminds me exactly of what happened between Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding in the 1990s. So this is best listened to on audio, and that's what I am doing when I go to the gym or do my laundry. Right now, I am on chapter 35. This is a 4-star book for me, so please check it out if you have not read it yet. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys have a good week. My next reading progress video will be out. Actually, there will be a slight change in my reading progress video posting schedule because I was originally going to do a video next Monday, but then I realized it doesn't make sense to do 2 reading progress videos when I'm already talking about reading progress for my holiday TBR in a video that I'm doing with Matt on the 20th. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm already planning to review the holiday books in the video I'm doing with Matt on the 20th. And the next general TBR reading progress video will be out on Monday, the 22nd of December, instead of next Monday, because that will give me more time to make progress on some of these other books that I'm working on. And then I will be taking the rest of Christmas week off, and my final end of the year video, which is the 10 before the end TBR wrap up, will be out on the 28th. So I hope you guys have a good week. Thank you for tuning in.